Welcome to the Christian Romance Podcast, where we go behind the books with inspiring Christian romance authors, exploring faith, love, and the journey that brings the story to life. I'm your host, Kelly Jo Wilson, and today we're chatting with Allie Pleiter. Allie is a best-selling international author of inspirational romance, cozy mysteries, and faith-based fiction with over 70 titles and 1.5 million books sold worldwide. She's the creator of the acclaimed Chunky Method, helping writers and creatives boost productivity with personalized, sustainable strategies. A sought-after speaker and coach, Allie empowers professionals to thrive with creativity, purpose, and grace. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode for a very special new book giveaway. Now, here's my conversation with Allie. Hi, Allie. I am so happy to have you on the Christian Romance Podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. I can't wait for our listeners to hear more about your background and more about your story because you are very versatile. You are an author, you are a speaker, coach. I can't wait to hear more about it because you have just this wonderful inspirational encouragement that you can just tell that you have such a call on your heart to do what you're doing. Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit more about you, how you got started writing, what that looked like for you, and just kind of how your faith journey was intertwined in that.
Well, I started writing in a very unusual way, and it's like all good storytellers. It's a good story. I actually was trained as an actor. I wanted to be a soap opera star. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be a soap opera villainess because at this height, with this hair and this deep voice, there was no ingenue on the table. So I went to Northwestern University and got a theater degree, and discovered very quickly that it is a liability to be as tall as I am. I'm 6 feet tall, and it's a liability in television to be that tall. So when I finally got my interview and my audition, they took one look at my height and went, "Thank you very much." So I thought, well, what am I going to do then? So I moved from acting to directing, from directing to producing, and from producing to fundraising, which had a lot of storytelling and writing involved, writing to a deadline. And great run up to publishing, hearing no a lot. so I was in fundraising and I was having a really bad day at work, and I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and as a joke, I said, why don't I just ditch it all and write romance novels? It can't be that hard. It can't be harder than what I'm doing now. Now, it's important to remember that the person to whom I was saying this was the editor for romance for a major New York publishing house. So I launched my career by trash talking her job. And she very rightly said, "Fine, smarty pants, I dare you. Write one." And I said, I can't. I haven't read one in years. And so the next day there was a FedEx box at my door with the 10 best-selling romances from her line.
She was committed. She's like,
clearly she'd thrown the gauntlet down. And I read the first one and hated it. And I don't even remember what it was. Read the second one and was like, By the third one, I thought, I might be able to do this. So I called her back and said, all right, I'm game. I'll bite. But I want to make a lot of money at this. So what sells? And she said, well, we're having a lot of luck with 19th century Texas. Well, yeah, I hate history. Grew up in Connecticut. That ought to be fun. So long story short, I wrote this long historical novel that ended up selling. She was very wise and said, I am not going to look to buy your book. It's good enough that I could. Holy cow, who knew? But she said, if I buy your book, you and I will be forever defending the fact that we were friends and you sort of got in the back door. So instead, I'm going to introduce you to a literary agent, and I'm going to tell that agent that she can sell it anywhere but my house. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm one of those ridiculous people who sold the first book I ever wrote. And that was, I'm looking at my bookshelf here, that was 70 books ago. So
70, that's amazing. Oh.
So I tell people that God set it up so I couldn't take any credit for it because he knew if I could, I would. And so I can take no credit for my launch into publishing. It is one of those amazing stories. People often ask me to come and talk about how to break into publishing, and I'm like, I'm not your girl. You can't do it the way I did. So it's a fun story to tell, and no one's more delighted than me as to how this all rolled out and what I do now. I think I would have never. This is way better than being a soap opera villainess, let me tell you.
Oh, absolutely. You are so funny. I love that that's how you got started. I think that's so interesting because, and a lot of people too want to be like the star or something like that. You don't hear many people say about being the villain, but
Yep,
the soap opera villains are very cool
that's what I wanted.
and they surprisingly like come back to life multiple
Multiple times, yes.
multiple times. I think I used to watch Days of Our Lives. Have you ever watched
Yep.
that one?
Hmm.
Where Stefano, wasn't he like the big bad guy? Yes,
Yeah.
Stefano has been killed off and brought back so much. So it's job security is what you essentially were looking for as the villainess. That's wonderful. I can't believe 70 books. That's absolutely amazing. Congratulations to you. That is so difficult. Oh my goodness. That's absolutely wonderful. And like you said, you hear no a lot. You hear no a lot. Even though you got into it with your friend and you still had kind of an in and then you got set up with an agent, it's still a long journey, at writing, being disciplined in your daily life, doing the work, reading the craft books, doing all of that. It's very much, and you know that for sure because you even coach. I love that you coach on it too. You're so funny. I am not your girl. Don't follow my path. That's
Well,
wonderful.
in order to do that, category romance is really a high volume business.
Mhm.
And so you need to be able to produce about 4 books a year is pretty it sounds like a lot, but it's pretty standard for category romance. I have many colleagues who do more than that. Uh, but because I was used to writing to a deadline, I became sort of a student of productivity and of creative productivity because that's different, right?
Mhm.
I'm married to an engineer. He does a different kind of productivity. But to be able to put your creativity on basically a schedule that's built based on how you do it, I had created my own system, and then when people started asking me about it, I began teaching it, and somebody at one point said, "Well, it's just about finding your chunk." And it became the chunky lady, the chunky method, and I became the chunky lady, and I love that. I own that. Um, that is, I love my books, and I love how my books reach readers. But sometimes I really feel like the chunky method is why I'm here, in
Aw.
terms of enabling other writers to be consistently, dependably productive without stressing out.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. What is the chunky method? Why don't you explain it a little bit?
So, it's the short version of this is that every writer has what I believe to be a chunk. And your chunk is if I sat you down in close to what you think of as good writing conditions and said, write until you run out of juice.
Mm.
Every writer, if you do that, will generally come up with a consistent amount of words. It's either 500 or 200 or 1,000 or 1,200, where it's their sort of creative battery. It's what they're capable of producing in one shot. So you take that. First of all, you go through a discovery process. There's a book, and I coach on it, but there's a discovery process of figuring out what that chunk is.
Mm.
And once you do that, you figure out, all right, how many chunks do I need to get to the end of the first draft of my manuscript? And I'm a big, big believer that you power all the way through the messy first draft before you go back and edit. Um,
Mm.
so basically, how many chunks does it take? And then you sit down. People say, "Well, how do you write 4 books a year?" And the short answer is 1,200 words, 5 days a week. That's my chunk.
That's
So
wonderful.
once you figure this out, you're not doing somebody else's version of what a serious writer ought to do. You're doing your version, and
Oh yeah.
you can grow your chunk over time. And there are behavioral characteristics of big chunk writers, like anybody over 1,000 in their words in their chunk, and there are behavioral characteristics of little chunk writers. And then there are people who need to do it there's two dynamics. One is big chunk writer, little chunk writer. The other is, are you a Marlin or a Dory? Which, if you know anything about Disney Pixar, the Marlin is straight, do it A, B, C, D, E, and the Dory is A, F, G. you know, um, so once you know those two things about yourself, then you can create a plan and a system that's so organic to you that it makes it very easy to succeed.
Oh, yeah, I love that so much. I love that as soon as you said a Marlin or a Dory, I was like, I knew exactly where you were going with that. I'm like in the middle, I would say. I'm like kind of in the middle because some days I definitely am a Dory, but more so with research. Research is very, down a rabbit hole I
Mhm.
go. But I love that. That's so wonderful. And it's very individualized, which I feel like it's
Very.
so reproducible for people. It doesn't feel it's not going to be such a big change following that. Once, like you said, you find your discovery and find your chunk. I love that so much. You said I'm the chunky lady.
I'm
I
the
love
chunky
it.
lady.
I love it. I'll definitely link to that in the show notes on your, because you've written books on this too, right? Don't you have books to share?
I have. I've written the Chunky Method Handbook. There it is. Da, da, da. Which is basically walking you through the whole process, most particularly for novelists. But the great thing about the Chunky Method is it doesn't matter what content you're writing. So I've worked with bloggers, I've worked with nonfiction people, I I have worked with PhD students to use the Chunky Method to get their dissertation written. So it's basically any kind of creative writing and even some sort of nonfiction,
Mhm.
but it's just a series of aha moments. There's no secret. Everyone's waiting for the secret handshake that we all seem to be. All the published writers are keeping it from all the unpublished writers. No, there is no secret handshake, but this feels like creative common sense to most people, and it explains why they behave the way they do, and informs how they're going to plan from here.
That's great. I just love that so much. Especially because even pantsers or quote unquote pantsers or
Hmm.
discovery writers, they all have a method. You all start from somewhere, right? Like there's always going to be a moment where you're sitting at your computer or sitting at, even some people still handwrite, especially first draft. There's going to be that time whenever you're facing that, right? You sit down to do it and you're going to be following this way, even if you are, like you said, a Dory and you're always, you want to be, I don't want to write this scene today. I want to write this one, I want to write
Right.
the end. I don't want to write the beginning. That's so practical and so helpful. I love it. I'm going to have to check out your book for sure. I
Thank
didn't
you.
even know the chunky method existed. I am so
Now
happy.
you do.
Yes, that now I'm discovering this. I love it. And is that because you also do a lot of speaking engagements too, right? Is that, do you usually speak to authors or do you like to speak because your speech, like your speaking engagements are really encouraging. You have some videos on your website. Who
Thank you.
is it that you most like to reach there? Is it mainly writers?
I love writers, but I also, because productivity, any kind of creative person, their productivity it's hard to predict. It's hard to control. You think that if you put any structure behind it, that's going to squash all the art out of it. And in
Mhm.
fact, the opposite is true. But because I've had to be creative under some unusual circumstances and some difficult trials, I also do a lot of teaching about the power of journaling. There's a journaling practice I've done for, gosh, more than 20 years every day, which is, I consider it to be the single most impactful, personally, professionally, spiritually, is this journaling practice. And so a lot of times, if I'm not speaking to writers about writing, I'm speaking to women or anyone about the power of journaling and persistence and resilience.
That's absolutely wonderful because it is so cathartic to sit down sometimes, even if nobody ever reads it. Even if you write it down, tear it off, shove it in a drawer. It's very powerful, right? I mean, especially when you're going through very difficult times. I mean, there's times in life where it's not always easy. You have different trials that come or different things that you're facing, and it's you got to have some kind of outlet to do it. And writing is so healthy. Even in, as a nurse, I would always see that's like the number one suggestion for a lot of
Mm.
different mental health issues or like anxiety, depression, all of that. I really like the cognitive behavioral therapy methods of how to change your thinking into putting into action. And one of the major things of that is journaling. Like you
Mhm.
said, it's very important in any way, shape, or form to move forward, to have that time. And like you said, most important, spiritually, physically, mentally, it creates the sense of like mindfulness, I feel like too, which is so important. It's
Uh,
just
yeah, I feel like there are some things I will so easily believe.
mm.
Some thoughts I will so easily believe. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll believe just about anything, right? But when I see it written down in a journal, I look and go, no, wait, that's a lie. That's not true.
Oh.
Um, that's one of the things journaling does. And I also think journaling, you can look back. My journaling practice is essentially three blessings, um, three prayers for the day. What three things just the next 24 hours, right? This is just what I need for the next day. Three things to avoid and one person to affirm. And I do that every day. And then I go back at the end of the month and look at all those blessings. And sometimes you forget. You think, oh, this month was a dumpster fire. And you go back and there's all these, oh, there was that and that and that and that and that. So I think that's what I find so powerful about journaling. And it, it gives you a perspective that uh, even if you're not a writer, right? Even if writing isn't your number one impulse, it gives you a perspective that I don't know how to get any other way
Oh,
than to write
yeah.
it down.
What a good point about the lies. I mean, how many
Hmm.
times a day do we even say to ourselves, like, you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not going to do that? Like, all these like things, right? Especially
Right.
that Satan wants to just foster and isolate and keep you confused and keep you in that place of especially of isolation. So that's such a good
Yeah.
point about just for clarity. It's a lot
Hmm.
harder to believe if you're writing down all the hateful things that you're saying to yourself. What I
Yeah.
tell my son? I try to, and my son is the sweetest. He's 10. He is the sweetest, most empathetic child I think I've ever met in my life. He is very, very thoughtful of other people. But he'll get real frustrated sometimes. And like, he'll just go like 0 to 100, and he just gets real frustrated. But he'll say, and sometimes, like, I think the one day he was like, I'm stupid, or he said something like that. And I said, buddy, it's just as important how we talk to ourselves as how we talk to other people. It's just as important,
Yeah.
like you're so kind. You got to be kind to yourself too. Don't say that you're not stupid. I know you're frustrated, but it's okay. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's such a good, what a powerful thing I didn't even think of that. Like having that clarity, like it's harder to believe that
Yeah.
way. Or it's easier to identify too. Like that's
Yes.
not true. That's not true.
Right.
That's an absolute lie. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love your whole process too. I think that that's so positive. And it's always such a good idea. I can't remember. It probably was a writing coach somewhere talking about taking inventory of milestones. Like I
Mm.
actually have a folder and I call it my motivation folder. And I have a little like milestone tracker thing too, because it's so easy to forget. It really is to forget like the things that you do, especially, oh my gosh, over 70 books. Every single part of every one of those books, even though you're putting out 4 books a year, is a huge milestone. First draft, second draft, first edit, this and that. I mean, it's such a big accomplishment. You can just it's so easy to get caught up in every day to forget those. Do you feel like that too? Like, do you actually document some of the things that, like the struggles that you go through too, to see how God ends up blessing it? Or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, but there's a reason why the first thing I do are the blessings. And
Mm-hmm.
and granted, some days, you're digging up off the floor. My very favorite sort of bottom of the barrel least blessing-y blessing was there was a night that my son was sick when he was a teenager. We were in the ER,
Mm.
and the only good thing I could come, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and it had been a long day, and it was going to be a long day ahead of us. And the only thing I could come up with was that the vending machine coffee wasn't nasty. Because, sometime you have vending machine coffee and it's literally just a caffeine delivery system, right? It's not
Yes,
even coffee. And this
100%.
was actually good vending machine coffee. And I thought I think that's going to hold as the least blessing-y blessing. But the more and I truly believe this, and I think the neuroscience has borne it out. The more you train your brain to look for it, the more you see it.
Yeah.
The more you train your brain to stop what's still good about this situation, the faster you can get to there. I mean, I travel a lot for what I do, and I see a lot of people at their wits' end in airports.
Mhm.
And if you can just stop and think, what is still possible? I'm delayed, but I can still get a good meal. I can still find an outlet and work. I can still be kind to the person whose delay is not their fault, right? I can take this opportunity not to take it out on them. Um, so it is a muscle to see that blessing and to move forward. It's brain training, absolutely. And sometimes you have to just resettle yourself with prayer. And there are times where I start my writing for the day going, okay, Lord, I need 1,200 words today, and I don't know what they're going to be. So let's just open up the laptop. And I just truly believe you can get to the point where you trust that and you act on it, and you can leave behind the sort of that benefits nobody.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and that's absolutely amazing advice because it's very true, and it's just like it's kind of the similar science behind those personality tests, right? Like, you're gonna look
Yeah,
for ways that you fit in a positive way because 'cause they're fun mostly, like, you like to hear we like to hear about ourselves, you know? What are you? Are you I like those, 6 I think it's like 16 personality tests, the ENFP and all of those.
mhm,
It's kind of like a similar thing behind that. You're gonna look for how you fit into it. So I think that's a neat way to think about it. You're training your brain to really look for the good and to be grateful
yeah.
too, because it definitely is not natural. It doesn't come
No,
natural. We
it
have
does
to be
not.
intentional. It's not our natural self wants to focus on the negative and not move forward for the most part, so it's definitely in being intentional about our thinking and stuff, because actually I think was a safety mechanism for us, because I mean now we're fairly safe and with all the technology and all of security and stuff we can have in our world. But back in the day, you have to be a high alert for real threats
Yeah,
and things like that. So I think it's kind of a protection, just like fear. A little bit of fear is good, right? It's a protection. But when it's like out of control and turns into anxiety and all this stuff, then your mind's all over the place, and we got to be intentional with thoughts. It's hard because life gets busy. How do you handle that? Do you have a certain time every day? Like, are you better in the morning, better in the evening? How does it fit for you?
it's varied, and one look at my career will tell you that I'm generally a very sort of everything all over the place. I'm definitely a Dory. I like to. I mean, I don't even like to just write inspirational romance. I write inspirational romance and murder mysteries and nonfiction. Doing all those things appeals to me.
Yeah.
Um, so there's not a particular time. I am a very strong believer in to-do lists.
Mm,
I work with a digital to-do list that I've got a chart in my office that literally maps out all the 4 books that are currently in production. I'm usually writing the draft of one, editing one, um, doing the promotion for one, and then getting ready to give the next one to my publisher. So I'm working on 4 levels at all times, and I know exactly what has to happen each week. so that when I open up my to-do list on a Sunday evening, it's usually the last thing I do on a Sunday, open it up and put out, okay, this is going to happen on Tuesday. This is going to happen on Thursday. This is going to happen on Wednesday and Friday. So that when I pull up that list Monday morning, it's already there for me what I have to do. And I firmly believe that sends a message to my brain saying, I expect 1,200 words from you today. It doesn't always happen the same time of day. It'll be whenever it works out, but I order that to-do list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or whatever. And I've gotten my brain so well trained with that when I do number 4, it's an actual physical discomfort if I don't do 5 next. So I can make sure that the writing stays, up in the top 5 or whatever. And in the days where my son was sick and we didn't know what tomorrow was going to look like, or
Mhm.
we'd just gotten some crazy health news, and everything was swirling around me. Well, I knew I would do 1, and then I would do number 2, and then I would do number 3. And it was a way to take the everything that I had to do and everything that we were facing down to, I always tell people the most powerful knowledge of all is what to do next.
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
necessarily in the long run, because the long run changes 11D times. And generally, God has a much better idea of the long run than we think we
For
do.
sure. For sure.
So it's knowing what to do next, and that's literally how I do it. Is one, tick down the to-do list every day, uh, and I've gotten really good. And the nice thing about being a writer is I generally have an enormous amount of control over my day. Um, I'm an empty nester. My children are
Hmm.
now adults and grown and out of the house. So my day is pretty much my own to command. But all of those skills were built when that wasn't true.
Yeah.
So that when things do go wrong, I tend to be mostly the calmer person, and I'll come up with, all right, what's 1, 2, and 3 now? It wasn't what we thought. So here's the new number 1, 2, 3. Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
That's
That's great.
resilience to me. That's the practical version of resilience.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. If you can handle it in the midst, especially of sick children, going to the
Hmm.
hospital, going doing different things, not to mention deadlines. Deadlines alone can be very intimidating to people. And as a writer, you know this, the deadline is it. You have
Yeah.
to meet that. I mean, there's very little wiggle room a lot of times. Now, I think it's probably a little more flexible, but that deadline is for not just you, it's other people, waiting on that. You're part of a team. It's not just you by yourself, even though sometimes it can feel like that whenever you're writing, you're like in your office and stuff. But yeah, it's very hard to plan and to take a step forward when it's craziness around you. So if you could do it then, now, with the empty nester, oh, how are you doing with this?
I was not the classic empty nester mom. I was like, fly and be free. Get out, I am launching you. You are into the world. So no, I was just very happy. Now, granted, I was trying to think. I think it's been 8 years since my son graduated college, and
Oh,
and then
okay.
that would be 12 since my daughter. So we were long, but even when they were first going off to college, I was just like, I'm so happy for you. Go find the world.
Enjoy, right.
So yeah, so I never bothered it. It never bothered me. But I think you hit on something that I want to circle back to, which is when we talk about writing a book, it seems like this big, huge thing. And it is this big, huge thing. And there's all kinds of moving pieces. But the power of the chunky method is, for today, it's just the next 500 words. And there's something about being able to focus that all the way down to just the next thing. And to also be very specific about it. I
Mm,
need more time to write is not a very actionable goal.
yes.
I need to sit down 3 times a week and write 500 words each time that I sit down is a very actionable, specific goal. You know if you've done it, and you know when you haven't. So that's part of the power of it, of taking that grit. And believe me, everything can be chunked. We just did a cross country move last year, and it was chunky methoded all the way down to this is what has to happen this week and this week and this week and this week. And so it's a lifestyle, shall we say, not
Oh,
just a
absolutely.
writing method.
When you said that too, I was actually thinking about that. I'm like, you could probably do that with a lot of things, like with
You can.
preparing, just basically with any kind of task that you have to do, especially like cleaning or anything like that. And it's so funny because in nursing, we would always talk about SMART goals, specific,
Hmm.
measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely. And that, I'm so grateful for that. There's some things that I've like carried, very few things I should say I've carried since nursing school, because the book nurse is very different than the life nurse, but that I always took with me because I thought it was very smart. It's very, very, and I love that you say that in the chunky method because it's true. It's when you break it into digestible pieces and understand that this is the piece you have to do today will fit your ultimate goal. It's
Hmm.
also really it builds a lot of confidence too. Like
Yes.
you're getting this done, it's building confidence. You're like, okay, I'm just going to the next thing then. And then I'm going to go here. And then eventually it's this, it's just very positive, such a positive way to focus on doing things. I love it, Allie. I love it. I got to get a copy of this book.
And it's the reason why the journals are called My Daily Momentum,
Mm,
because it's building small win upon small win upon small win upon small win, because I think that's how you grow your own resilience. You grow it with momentum so that when things get a little bit uphill, you've got a little momentum, to hit the uphill. So yeah, it really is all about personal. That's sort of that's my thing, is personal momentum, either as a writer or as a woman or as a business person. Just taking the time to be really deliberate about building your personal momentum. That's a big thing for me.
that's awesome. I love it so much. I think it's just so positive. What a wonderful statement. Like, what a wonderful way to be and to encourage others to be. I just love it. I love it. But we are almost at time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your True North Spring series? Because your fourth book in the series came out. But what do you want to talk about the first book, right? A Place to Heal? To heal?
Yeah, it's because it's always good when you're talking about a series. And the
Yeah,
nice
for
thing is
sure.
I know several readers who they don't want to buy the series until they know they can get all four books, right? And so that's absolutely true. The concept for True North Springs came to me in that I wanted to create a summer camp where it was specifically designed as a respite for families who had lost a member to violence.
Mm,
And I wanted to spend time with people whose lives had been, shattered, and talk about how faith and how love rebuilds that, and what the scars are like. And so I created this fictional summer camp in outside of Phoenix, Arizona, where this happened. And the first book talks about the woman whose idea it is. She is wounded as a police officer,
mm,
and she has seen one too many child reach for a gun as the answer to a problem.
mm,
And she wants to not only put the world back, but give these kids something else to do. So she finds this property and this property owner in outside of Phoenix. And it's just a wonderful love story of two really wounded people. He's a widower whose wife was killed in a drunk driving accident,
mm,
and so he's got a lot of scars. But they have this marvelous, I believe he's 10 year old boy who just sort of understands, and at the same time he's wounded, and they're working together to try and rebuild life and make something really wonderful out of this terrible story. And so
mm.
it ended up being an incredibly emotional series because there's always six or seven families on the camp. So A Place to Heal is how the camp got started. It's the birthplace of Camp True North Springs. And then the three other books are groups of families who come to True North Springs because they've lost a member to a bunch of different things. And it was wonderful to explore grief and the power of love to heal. I think that's really the theme of all the books, and they were tough ones, man. These are tearjerkers. These are grab your hanky books.
It sounds like it's good though. It sounds like
Yeah,
it's really, and what a perfect title, A Place to Heal, right?
yeah,
Because all these people are coming here with all these wounds, and we all have a little bit of brokenness inside of us. I feel like that especially like with the widower and then the child, and everybody has their own kind of wound. It just hits so many different, can resonate with so many different people. Especially with throughout the series with different families going through it.
yeah.
Sounds wonderful. I love it. So I will put a link to your website. Do you want to tell our listeners and readers a little bit about where to find you?
You can find me. Well, I do a lot of different things, right? So
Yes.
the website is definitely the best place to find me, and that's alliepleiter.com. And then you need to know that Pleiter is Pleiter. So it's ALLIEPLEITER.com. And when you pull that up, it'll say, here's the speaking stuff, here's the books, here's the coaching. Um, because I have a very sort of multifaceted career, and I really enjoy that. And so I wanted to make sure that people who come to the website can find what they need to find first, and then go, oh, look, she does this, and oh, look, she does that. And that's fun for me. There's a lot of crossover, and we're very deliberate about it. Um, the writers become the readers, become the speakers. I do speaking engagements that find me new writers. I do speaking engagements that find me new readers. Again, speaking engagements are where my inner theater major gets to come back out and play. We need to make sure that happens on a regular basis.
Well, before we go, Allie, is there any Bible verse that has kind of been your anchor verse to carry you through all the different changes in your life, especially in the difficult times, like going through when you're developing that chunky method and kind of working through those tough times? Was there a verse, or even a verse for your In a Place to Heal, for the healing the wounds of your characters?
The verse that I chose was the one from at the beginning of A Place to Heal, and which is in the good old King James language. They ask us to use the King James. So it's, thou hast showed me great and sore troubles,
Mm,
shall quicken me again, and shalt bring me up again from the depths of the earth.
mm.
And it's nothing, and that's Psalm 71:20. There's a lot of different versions of it, but the idea that no pit is too deep. No, and we've had our share of struggles as a family, and everything is redeemable. That's how big God is. It may not look the way you thought it was going to look, but I do believe there are blessings in every situation. We just have to remember to look for them, and maybe to pray for God to give us the eyes to see them. Sometimes we're not ready to see them, and they're there. We just have to be able to open our eyes and see them, and that's part of what God does for us.
Oh, absolutely. That's so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so true. And what a perfect verse for the book. I mean, just for the whole concept.
Yeah.
It just is that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Allie. Well, this has been a pleasure. So you come back anytime. I'm happy to chat with you, whatever you want to talk about. But yes, thank you just so much for being here today and for sharing your heart and for sharing more about your various wonderful activities that you do and the chunky method that I will be getting a copy of, and your books. I love it. Congratulations to you on 70 plus books. I'm just so excited for you, and I'm excited for anyone listening who maybe has not read one of your books to try the True North Spring series. It sounds like an amazing series.
I'm just thrilled to be able to keep doing what I'm doing.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, especially because we're celebrating Christmas in July all month long here on the podcast. To add a little extra cheer to your summer, I've teamed up with some fabulous Christian romance authors for a special giveaway featuring 5 heartwarming holiday reads, full of castles, cozy cabins, swoony heroes, and a whole lot of Christmas magic. Whether you're listening right when the episode drops or tuning in later, you can always enter the latest giveaway at christianromancepodcast.com. One winner will take home all 5 books. Just our little way of making your July a bit more merry and bright. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, keep your faith, share the love, and happy reading.